Good morning, Demitrius Omphroy. Welcome on VH Berries.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Your name, Dimitrius, means follower of Demeter, and she is actually the Greek goddess of corn and harvest.
That's really interesting. I actually don't think I knew that, but that's pretty interesting.
You were not into the cornfield, but more into the field of football.
Yeah, definitely a different sort of field that I was used to playing on, but I can see the relation.
And the interesting thing is that you also have two other names that are Irving and Tolentino.
Yes, so Irving is my grandfather's name on my dad's side, and Tolentino is my mom's maiden name, which is the Filipino side. So I guess it's traditional that they take two middle names. It's a mouthful, Demitrius Irving Tolentino Omphroy, but I think it flows now. It's a little long.
As you just mentioned, Dimitrius, you were a former football player, and right now you're in the sort of transition, making contemporary art.
I grew up playing football, soccer my whole life, and art was always really prevalent in everything that I did from such a young age. But as I started to develop things career-wise, soccer was just more of something that was, I guess, something that could translate into occupation, and it helped me get through college. And then into post-college, I was a professional soccer player. So it was something that I always just felt like I should continue doing, but art was always in the background, kind of like filling a different creative void for me. And making the transition now, gosh, I guess I want to say 12 years later, it seems really natural. It's definitely different, but it seems like a natural transition because art was always really prevalent in my life at such a young age.
I also feel that you never left soccer and football because you always try to implement it in your work. We will talk about it after, but with GoPro and other projects.
Yeah, definitely. Soccer, football. I don't know if we're supposed to be saying soccer or football, but football, we'll just use the global term for it, has always been really important and impactful in my life. And as I'm creating art in a different form, I think back at GoPro, I was doing it behind the lens. I think now that I'm doing painting on canvas, it's definitely manifesting and coming out in a different way. And it's still really prevalent in the work that I'm doing. It's a lot of movement, a lot of bold colors and things that kind of take me back to when I was playing, happiness and creativity and just sort of like a free-flowing nature to some of the work that I'm doing. I feel like, in a way, even if it's not specifically on a pitch or about a soccer image or anything that I'm creating, it still has its own meaning. And I think it also plays into other meanings of things that I've dealt with in my life, one being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and just this sort of idea of a diagnosis that I'll have for the rest of my life. I think there's a lot of play there with the sort of like time limit of how soccer has been in my life, but also this diagnosis of like mobility or the unknown of mobility, sort of playing and having like a time limit in the things that I'm doing. So I think it all kind of shows up in my work in different ways. And as I'm sort of learning about myself and growing, I think it also sort of like evolves and transforms, but it's definitely prevalent in the stuff that I'm doing.
You just mentioned a very powerful word, Demitrius Omphroy, the word sclerosis, which is, if I understood correctly, a sort of injuries that you can have when playing sports and physical effort.
Yeah, multiple sclerosis, especially at a younger age and especially as a male being multiple sclerosis, especially at a younger age and being diagnosed as a male, isn't very common. And 10 years ago when I was diagnosed, I didn't know much information about it. And I think what I took from the diagnosis was that I could either let it define me and kind of let it be this thing that prevented me from where I wanted to go, or I could use it more as like my fuel or my passion to continue getting me to the point where I really want to be. And I always wanted to sort of like, as cliche as it sounds, like overcome the odds or beat the odds. And to me, getting that diagnosis at an early age was just more fuel to my fire to be like, I don't want to let this define me. So I went on to play professionally at 21, and it actually made me the first player, I think, in American soccer history to have multiple sclerosis but be playing professionally, which was amazing, an amazing accomplishment for myself. But I think, if anything, I just 10 years now, 12 years past this this diagnosis, I look back and think like, what I'm most proud of is the fact that I didn't let it stop me from what I wanted to achieve. You know, I didn't let it stop me from allowing me to pursue my dream. So I think now, as I'm painting and putting a lot of my artwork on canvas and expressing through painting, I feel like it's just another thing that I'm using to infuse the work and the experiences that I have onto paper or canvas. And it's liberating. It's scary at times too, but I definitely feel like overall I'm still pursuing that dream that I want to accomplish. So I'm here and I'm happy that I'm doing it.
And you didn't let it define you, because since 2012, you are the founder of a foundation called We Heart Health that is focusing on creating a leverage and awareness around these injuries.
Yeah, We Heart Health was something I started kind of simultaneously with my professional soccer career. And what I realized as I was playing and learning and meeting other multiple sclerosis patients, I realized that MS doesn't really have a specific way that it works. It could be minor or it can be really aggressive and progressive. And I think that no matter what, the sort of common theme that I got from when I spoke with doctors was just about healthier living, is about trying to do everything that you can that's in your control to live a healthy life. And that's like eating vegetables and fruits and just trying to eat healthier, you know. And there wasn't any secret to just healthier living other than just trying to like manage stress and get enough sleep and drink water and just do these things that are more beneficial is beneficial for anybody, not just a person that's living with multiple sclerosis. So I think what I wanted to do was create an organization that helped to just like highlight the healthy living in addition to whatever sort of drug therapy that someone might be on. It's just saying like, you know, it's kind of like a two-pronged thing. You have to approach it from like the medical perspective, but also make sure that you're doing things like watching how much you drink alcohol or get enough sleep, you know, stuff like that I feel like maybe gets overlooked in the medical world. So it's been really amazing to start that. And I feel like what it did for me as I created it was educated myself more. It helped me to just like be open to hearing people and learning from other people with different stories. And if anything, it helped me start to just embrace my own diagnosis with it and feel like I can live the best possible life no matter what I was doing, you know. So it helped me feel, I guess, empowered to live healthier.
In definitive, Demitrius Omphroy, you have 3 hearts, one on your chest, one for this foundation because it includes the word heart, and another one over your left eyebrows.
Oh wow, I didn't even think about this. What a great observation. Wow, I'm not sure how to respond to this because I haven't even put those two together, but or I guess those three together. But I guess for me, the heart, and also what I put in a lot of my artwork is the flower. The heart and the flower, it represents life. It represents this sort of idea that we grow and we evolve and we can continue to just learn about ourselves through experiences, through love. And I think that what it helps me to remember is no matter what we do, we're always learning and we're always choosing to live and we're always choosing to love, you know. And I think there's a project that I did with French Connection, and I remember talking about this sort of like life cycle. I think it's like the idea that we live and then things sort of die, whether it's experiences or whatever or habits. And then as those die off, we kind of like are reborn with this new sort of sense of being with maybe a different perspective. And I think that the cycle happens a lot. I think we kind of go through these periods in life. And for me, I guess maybe the heart and the flower is really representative of that. It's about this sort of like the shedding of, it could be negative experiences, it could just be growth into sort of this like new reborn form of ourselves. And maybe a more simpler term, it's kind of just like starting a different chapter of life, you know. And so whatever has happened in the past, we kind of let go and learn from, and then sort of move forward in this new sort of undefined path of life. But that's a great observation of the three hearts. I didn't even think of that. You're pretty good, man. You're pretty good.
Because on the ground, in the nature, you are seeing the flower born and to reborn. And we can make a connection with the name of your studio called La Fleur, which is a French translation.
Yeah. It's the floor shop. It's also the name of the show that I'll be in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be called Girasol, which means sunflower. So there's a really important symbolic nature to what the flower means to me, and so it does show up even in my tattoos. I don't even know if you can see me right now, but it's in my artwork. It's on my body, and it's something that I think is symbolic to a lot more things than just the actual flower. I think it's like you said, it's life, it's death, it's beauty, it's pain, and I think all of it is in this sort of like ever-changing cycle. I think that it's interesting that you bring that up, the idea of girasol, sunflower, in Spanish. The idea behind the show was the flower, whatever it is, the sunflower for me is really important just because I sort of like mirror a lot of the flowers that I work with around the sunflower. But it's so beautiful and it's so bold and it's so iconic, you know, kind of like what a sunflower is when you say it. And to me, it's sort of about, a lot of my work is about like, there's a facade to it. There's this sort of idea that like all of us, we kind of put on like this first face, and this is the face that people see up front. It's usually a little bit more easy to digest and happier. And so when you look at my work and when you look at a flower, you kind of think at like, this is really beautiful. This makes me feel warm. This makes me feel amazing. But behind it, and there's always like a deeper meaning behind it, and a lot of my work is actually comes from a lot of pain or a lot of sadness. But I think initially this first layer that we give off is maybe sort of this this brighter element to it. And I think as you dig deeper, you maybe start to understand that to get to this brighter, beautiful element took a lot of pain and a lot of growth and a lot of learning. And so I think the idea of the flower, you know, it doesn't just become beautiful. It takes a lot of watering and nurturing and sunlight and time and just, care. And I think that that is sort of like what the flower means to me, and especially relates to the show that's coming up called Girasol, which is, I think, going to be there's going to be a lot of flowers in my work, but I think it kind of ties together with the whole meaning of kind of like why I paint.
That's very true, Demitrius Omphroy, because not only sunflowers are important for you, you can drop the end of the word, just the sun is important for you. Is it the reason why, as a football player, you didn't want to play in England or in Spain to get the Californian weather all the time?
I know, it's interesting you say that, being from California, and then I went to play, the team that I went to was in Toronto, which there's sun, but it's cold there. So it's really cold. But yeah, I think the sun is so, I'm sitting in my studio right now and it is freezing here in New York. So yeah, the sun is a necessity, but not the reason why I didn't go to Europe or Spain. But I did go to the Philippines, and the Philippines, there's a lot of sun there. It was hot.
Absolutely, because if I understood correctly, I saw that under the age of 17, you choose the national team of the United States, and then you turned yourself to the Philippines, which is one of your origin, because you have multiples citizenship.
Yeah, so I've also played with the Panamanian national team, which is funny. I've hopped around to different national teams. So yeah, at a younger age, growing up in the United States, I played throughout the U.S. youth national teams. And then as I started to develop and get older, you more think about opportunity. And so I started to work with other international backgrounds that I had. So Panama was another one. And so I went to Panama and played with the national team there. And then after college, I decided to commit to the Philippines national team, and was definitely a life-changing experience. And it was actually the first time that I ever felt a lot of. It was the first time that I ever felt like my grandpa really felt a lot of pride with me playing soccer. He always supported me, but he wasn't really into soccer. And I think I remember when I made like my national team debut, and I had some photos, and I just remember like family coming over and him like showing newspaper articles that I was in, or like magazines that I was in. And I hadn't ever felt that sort of just sense of pride from him. And to me, that was so important, that he felt like that's my boy and he's representing our country. And so I think that was like one of the most fulfilling experiences I could have had, playing soccer, playing football.
I like the way you're switching from the word soccer to football.
I know, just in case. I feel like if there's any comments of people saying, it's not soccer, I feel like I gotta appease both, so.
On the football field, you were a midfielder and defender, but right now in the art and video production and photography, you are in the forward position to the closest of the opponent goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would say it's shifted a little bit. I started out as an attacker, and then as I started going into college and playing professionally, I got moved back a little bit to this midfield line, defensive line, and then I got actually pushed back up forward. And so I think the breakdown of the positions to me, the forward mentality is about attacking and scoring, and it's about kind of going after whatever it takes to win, and I think that mentality of that forward attacking mindset, for me, translates into how I wanted to approach my diagnosis with multiple sclerosis, and just this sort of, this life of stepping into the creative world through directing and through video and photography, and then now into painting. I feel like I have this sort of like forward mentality, this drive that I guess just keeps me going. It's something that I don't really think too much about. I just know that I have to achieve something, and I just got to keep going for it. So I think that's a great sort of like perspective that you have, observation. But I definitely think I take that sort of like forward, gotta keep going after it mentality to achieve what I want to achieve.
In sport, there is this notion of the beauty of the gesture, which can also be related to the gesture when you are painting on a huge white paper, for example, in front of Florian Picasso in Dubai.
Yeah, that was really nerve-wracking, actually. There was a lot of camera crew there. And I just remember, I remember thinking about the process of everything. Whenever there's anxiety, whenever there is just a lot of eyes or anything that could maybe throw you off of your game or throw you off of the painting aspect of everything, I just remember that it's like walking. It's like one foot after the other. It's like painting. It's just one stroke of the paintbrush, and you just keep going, and you just know your process. And to me, that's like the calming aspect of what painting does to me. And it doesn't really matter how big the canvas is. It's just sort of like laying down each brushstroke at a time. And no matter how you do it, no matter how many people are watching, it's the same process, So for me, it reminds me that as wild as life can seem, it's just about not overcomplicating. It's the same process, and I think it's just sort of like making sure that you're consistent with it and continue doing it. And sitting in front of Florian Picasso and the camera crew to do this piece for them, it was definitely nerve-wracking, but I just kind of went back to sort of like my purpose, my intention of like why I'm there. And I think it's just to create. And so I think that calmed me, that helped me to realize that I'm supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be doing this, and there's a reason why. And so I think that helped me to like breathe and be able to get through it through each gestural paint stroke that I was doing.
As a matter of fact, you are everywhere in the world, Demitrius Omphroy. In Europe, when you were covering Cristiano Ronaldo, which is your favorite football player for GoPro, you just mentioned it in Dubai with these very special pieces of art, and very soon in Mexico with a very exciting art exhibition.
Yeah, all over. I feel like it's interesting because I've always traveled, from such a young age. I was always traveling for football, for soccer. And it's sort of just become normal to me. My base is in New York City, but my family is in California. And I also travel a lot to Europe. And there's a sort of like normalcy to having this, maybe like a globe-trotting sense of creating. And I think that I've done it on the soccer pitch, the football pitch. I've done it on canvases, and I've done it with some of my favorite football players in the world. But if anything, it just helps me to understand that my form of expression is not in one place, I guess. I want to travel. I want to do different things all over. And it almost feels like I almost need the inspiration of different countries and different experiences and new people to be able to fully express myself. And so I think I've just started to embrace this sort of like maybe not always being in one place longer than a couple months before I got to go somewhere and create again. But yeah, I guess it's just I always complain when I'm traveling a lot. I'm like, gosh, I'm traveling so much. And then I get back home and then I'm like, I gotta get out of here, So it's this sort of like it's a give and take of wanting to feel home and routine, but also wanting to go out and have new experiences.
The form of creation has lifted off like a rocket ship during the year 2020 because you had a sort of breakup into a relationship that gave you a lot of new questions about your life, your future path. And I feel that right now you're just wanting to do what you love through the fresh paint.
Yeah, I can see the connection you're making there. It's sort of like a fresh coat of paint, a fresh start, maybe. And I think going back to this sort of idea of like the life-death life cycle, as you start a new chapter in something, you learn from it. You know, it's a fresh coat of paint. It's a new start. It's something that you learn from and then hopefully become a better person from. And so I was in a relationship for almost 10 years and all of my 20s basically. And I think that when you consider how much time that is, and then to sort of not have that person in your life anymore, it was a huge adjustment for me. It's still an adjustment for me. But I'm understanding that there was a purpose to it all. And there is, if I'm not learning from that in some way, then I'm kind of doing myself a disservice. So I think taking the time to sort of understand what this all meant and how I'm processing it led me to painting again. And painting with a different intention and painting with a different voice. I think ever since I was younger, I never really felt like I had a voice in painting. I'd always try to create, and I never felt like it wasn't like my style, you know. And I think if anything came from some of the darkest times that I was in after my breakup, I would say I finally found the voice that had been inside me this whole time. And I think that was one of the biggest moments I could have ever had in my life. And now I kind of have to like pinch myself. I love playing soccer my whole life. I would wake up and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm playing the game that I love. But it's like a different sort of drive that I have as an artist or as a painter. Like, it's inexplicable, because I remember when people would ask me, like, what's your dream job? Like, what's something that if you didn't have to worry about money and you could just do, what would that be? And I would always say, to be a painter, to be an artist. I think that to me, if I could just paint and spend the rest of my life painting, I think that's what I would have wanted to do if I didn't have to worry about anything. And I get to say that, I can do that now, you know, and to me, being able to wake up and say that I can do that is just an incredible blessing in itself. And I think, even saying it now, even being on this show right now to be able to talk about painting, I think that to me is surreal a little bit. So I'm so thankful for the breakup. Not thankful that we broke up, but thankful that it led me to where I am today, and it had a purpose, and the person that I was with had a purpose in my life and still does. But I think that understanding what it all meant and learning from it to become the person I am now, I think was all part of the process and all part of life. And so the life, death, life, you know, as I like step into the next chapter of life, I'm hoping that I can continue with this forward mentality and just continue creating.
I'm very curious, Demitrius Omphroy, about the art inside the boundaries of the blank canvas of your art. How would you define your style? Because we can recognize your style immediately in less than a half of a second.
I feel like my work has a style to it that is childlike, but also intentional, and there's meaning to it. And it's simple, but not oversimplified. I think there's meaning behind everything that I do, and there's a lot of intention in the way that I paint. And I believe that what I started to learn as I painted more and more throughout like my college career and going into life after college was like in finding my voice, I needed to actually unlearn a lot of things that I was told when I was younger. Coloring in the lines and saying that, you know, a nose has to look this way and a flower has to look this way and a house has to look this way. And I feel like we kind of are taught these things, and then those shape the way that we create objects, create things, create life. And it's interesting when people say like, oh, I suck at painting, you know, or I suck at drawing, I'm not a good artist. And I think that there's something in there that we learned when we were younger that like, if it doesn't look like this, then it's not good, you know. And I think that going back into those years and understanding that it doesn't have to look like that. This is more about just understanding how to create something and how to draw something proportionally. And but diving deeper into that, how would you want to interpret what this object means? And I think that unlearning some of those things that we were taught when we were younger helped me to sort of understand how to create more freely, without limitations, without boundaries. And I think that what I feel when I paint, I try to just remove all sort of like rules that I had that I learned when I was growing up. And so there's a freeness to it that sometimes can feel simple, but it's actually a lot more intentional than it is simple. And I think that there's a consistency that I'm trying to maintain, but at the same time, it's also very impulsive and sporadic at times. I'm painting a lot of what I'm feeling in the moment. And so an arm can go this way, but it also can go this way, or it could just look like a normal arm. And I think that it's all dependent on how I feel on the day. And the colors are very intentional. It's not sort of like well, here's my palette today. A lot of the times I'm messing around with different tones. I'm working with how I feel in the moment, and what I want to sort of achieve with a piece when someone looks at it. And I'm also starting to like balance out what colors really mean a lot more to me. And I have a lot of similar colors that I'm using in terms of like my yellows. I only like use one specific yellow because every other yellow, I don't feel something from it. So I think it's all to sort of say that as simplified and childlike as my work can seem, it's actually really intentional. And I think as I've developed my voice, I'm starting to understand the why I'm doing things a certain way. And I think that's all playing into how I've sort of like discovered my voice in creating within these sort of like boundaries of a canvas.
If I understood correctly, you mean that the intention and the mindset is the most important thing?
That's exactly what I'm saying. The intention and the mindset, to me, is what can make a urinal a sculpture, or a urinal. Marcel Duchamp, I think, like intention behind everything, I think, is extremely important. And I think intention behind everything that we do beyond just art, the way we love, why we love, I think is really important. And not just loving because we're supposed to love. You know, I think having intention behind what we do should translate into everything that we do. And so I try to maintain that with my artwork, my directing, my soccer, football play, all of it.
Intention and also proportion, because everything in the world is all about this word proportion. The art, when you are trying to make a recipe to make a chocolate cake, in the fashion industry, and also when you are painting.
Exactly. I think there's a proportion, there's a balance, and I think everything needs to be in balance in some sort of way. And I think as I look at my life, as I look at my diagnosis with MS, as I look at soccer, football, painting, video, all the stuff that I've dabbled into, I think that when there's an imbalance, when there's a disproportion sort of like focus on one thing over another thing, life does feel a little bit imbalanced. And I think there there has to be some sort of like intention and balance into why we're doing what we do. And I think that the balance of everything makes it all make sense. I'm so sorry. I'm losing the sort of like idea that I'm saying, but hopefully it makes a little bit of sense. I'm so sorry. I also am like looking at my screen, and I have the microphone that I'm holding in my hand and realizing it's probably in some of these shots. So I apologize. I can tie that one off though, if we want to. So the idea of everything sort of has a balance in life, and if one thing seems imbalanced, it could feel really off. And so I think maintaining this sort of like proportion and correct balance to life is what I feel like helps me feel the best with whatever I do in whatever I do.
It's the same with flowers, Demitrius Omphroy, because if you put some water, that's good, but too much water, that's not good.
Exactly. That's a great way to tie those together.
Demitrius Omphroy, I'm wishing you the very best for your exhibition, foundation, and other projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm very appreciative to be here. And also, I'm super excited for you guys to check out some stuff coming out in spring of 2022. It's going to be really exciting. Have some great projects on the horizon, so I can't wait to share them with you guys.